Well, good evening. I am shocked that some of you are not disfigured because as sweet as you all are, and the rain falling, the sugar cubes outside, I think would have just been half disfigured, but maybe you're not as sweet as everyone wants to think, right? Anyway, Arthur, I'm shocked. I'm shocked that you just didn't dissolve out there, as sweet as you are, right? Roberta? Yeah, no, yeah, right. Don't lie in church. That'll get you in trouble. Yeah. Let's go ahead. We're going to stand. Tell it to Jesus. It's 237. Tell it to Jesus. Each one. I do hope you've had a good afternoon. Cecil, you willing to lead our service in prayer for us, please?
Kind of gracious Heavenly Father, we want to thank you and praise you for another day. We thank you for your mercies and your goodness. Lord, we just pray, giving you thanks and praise for who you are and for all you've provided. We ask that you be with us here in this service. God, you know the needs of each one that's come this way. We just pray that you would be honored and glorified through your word and through our testimonies.
Amen. You go ahead and be seated near to the heart of God, 235, near to the heart of God. Just a couple of quick announcements. We'll have the business meeting following the evening service. If you've not gotten a financial report, feel free to step back and grab those at any point in time. Also, as I've mentioned a number of times, would appreciate your prayers. Amy and I will be heading out west beginning Wednesday, and we will return Sunday night, Monday morning, August the 6th. And so be in prayer for that. Looking forward to it, but a number of things still need to be done prior to that. Matthew Hankey, the academic dean, will be joining us Sunday morning. He'll do Sunday school as well as the morning service. I want to encourage you, if it's at all possible, be here for all of that. Be faithful, and I think it's a great encouragement to whoever it is that is speaking, but he'll be here on Sunday morning. And then Dr. Roger Lucan will be next Sunday, August the 6th. And he'll be here again. He's been here previously as well. And so I think it'll be a great time. Jared's willing to fill in the remaining services, and we're thankful for him and his ministry as well. As I mentioned this morning, we have a flat number that we'll be giving them. If you would like to add to that, just be sure that it is designated on the offering clearly. Also, there are flyers on the back table for the blood drive. That is going to be Saturday, August the 5th. Going from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. And if you are able to be a part of that, I would encourage you to do so. Once again, Facebook is always a great avenue to be able to share those types of things. And then there's a number of things with Vacation Bible School. Flyers are still available on the back table, but also we have some papers that have been distributed. Those who were interested in being a part of various skits, those rough drafts, that's an important thing to remember. It is a rough draft. It does not necessarily mean it's the final thing, just some ideas that are now out there. And so there will be a meeting next Sunday night following the evening service. Jared's going to handle that, and that'll be next Sunday evening after that service. And so if you are planning on being a part of that, just by all means, be a part of that meeting. A number of things will be discussed, various positions that we're thinking each individual is serving in, some of the preparations and all of those details as well, the skit, just things like that, getting things all in a row. That'll be next Sunday night following the evening service. Again, the best thing you can do is to share this on Facebook. We'll again try to make that post a little bit more in a public forum or so. It's just kind of gotten a little bit buried, but we'll be sure to put that out there as well. And that's just a great avenue, by all means, to be able to share things. And so I'd encourage you to do that. Let's go on the song service 216, When We See Christ 216. Oft times Let's go ahead. We'll stand and sing Christ Returneth, 204. Christ Returneth. Let's stand as we sing. Chorus, watch me closely. Oh, joy, oh.
Excellent job. You go ahead and be seated. I'd like us to turn to Revelation chapter number 12. Revelation chapter number 12. I don't know if you have had the opportunity or not to travel much to D.C. or not. If you ever have a chance, actually, I would encourage you to do so. There are a number of really neat things to be able to see when you get up into that area. I've taken a number of trips up there, and one of the most striking things that I remember is actually not from some of the various school groups and so forth that I would have taken up there, but was a time when we were up there on a vacation, and we traveled through the various museums, and we went through the Holocaust Museum. If you are ever up in Washington, D.C. area, that particular museum is well worth your time. I don't remember a whole lot about it. It's been a number of years since I was up through there. There are certain images and so forth that still, even to this day, stand out quite significantly in my mind. But the Perhaps the one that would stand out by far the most is the very last scene, or at least it was at the time when we were there. When you are ready to walk out, they try to take all of history and try to give you some sort of a visual impact as to the impact of the Holocaust. And we know, although the numbers still fluctuate, to be quite honest with you, it appears from what we've been able to determine that nearly 6 million Jews were killed during this time frame. But at the very end of the Holocaust Museum is a very large display that is even then still only a small portion of the percentage of those who were killed, and it is a display of shoes. 4,000 shoes that have been on loan from another museum at the Holocaust. It's been there. They've had an agreement for years. 4,000 shoes. What is striking about it, when you begin to look at that, is that you have various sizes of shoes. Everything from the adults down to small children. And it's that image that you leave this museum with. It's a striking way to convey the horrors of what the Jewish people have faced. It's clear that represented in that was a mother who was holding a child, a young child, when they were executed. It's staggering for us to really wrap our minds around, but even throughout history, there are known attacks against God's chosen people. Even today, that particular area is an area that is known for a high degree of hostility and tensions that are always surrounding that area. You might ask yourself, why is it that so much of the world centers their focus on Israel? Well, it's not because of their size as a nation. They are not a large nation, even by population, much less by geography. It's not because of an abundance of natural resources that everyone is coveting. There are some things that are there, but for the most part, many of these natural resources are found in areas outside of this particular land. But yet, nonetheless, it has still been a target from so many people. Why is that? Well, I believe we'll discover the answer for that tonight in our text, because the reason governing much of this is nothing more than Satan's attempt to destroy God and God's people. And as we continue to study the events of Revelation, we're into the midst of the tribulation. And as Revelation 12 is going to describe a time period, we're actually going to be at the latter half of the tribulation. For the Jew, this would be an unprecedented time of persecution. Even though it has been great in years past, and I cannot imagine living in that area or in the Poland area when Adolf Hitler was running that, or Joseph Stalin and these various individuals throughout history, it would have been a tremendous challenge to have lived during that time. However, it becomes clear from our study tonight, as well as from other scripture passages, that there is another level of persecution that is yet to come. The premise I'd like to develop in our message tonight is, though faced with unprecedented persecution, God is not going to abandon his people and will in fact remain true to his covenant. Revelation 12, let's pick it up. Verse 12, we concluded last time with our first phrase, therefore rejoice ye heavens and ye that dwell in them. That is the conclusion from the first 11 verses. Our message tonight picks up in the latter part. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the male child. To the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the face of the serpent. The serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. The earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Let's begin our study right away tonight by noting, first of all, a limited time. We find an instruction that is given to those who are inhabiting the earth. This is now going to be those who are unsaved, in contrast to those who are in, well, I make that statement. Not necessarily. Let me back off of that statement. The contrast now made, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. I want you to see several things about this limited time. Number one, it is a time of distress. We know that Satan has attempted on multiple occasions to destroy the Messiah. Now, you'll have to go back and listen to our previous interpretation of Revelation 12, where the woman is said to be Israel, the dragon is Satan, and then the child that was brought forth is Jesus Christ. He has attempted throughout history on multiple occasions to destroy the Messiah. However, on each occasion, he was unsuccessful. We know the very first time was when Jesus Christ was born, and he attempted to have Herod kill him, an event which was unsuccessful. And then we saw last time also that there was a battle that was waged in heaven against Michael and his angels. And once again, Satan and all of his hosts were defeated, and this time he was banished from heaven. Now you've got a defeated foe who has been banished to the earth, and he is doing nothing more than throwing an absolute fit and determined to do as much damage as possible in his remaining time. For this reason, it is said in verse 12, woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. That word woe suggests something that is an occasion of distress, a tremendous level of persecution and difficulty and oppression that is about to come. Why? Because Satan knows that he has a limited time, and all of his efforts are now going to be directed into this world where he has been banished. It's a time of distress. Secondly, it is a time of displeasure. You can imagine now the devil is come down unto you, according to the text, having great wrath. He has been cast out of heaven and is no longer permitted access to the presence of God, and Satan is now confined to the earth, and as you can imagine, he is full of intense displeasure. The Bible uses the word wrath, and there are two different words. This one describes that outburst or that emotional anger, the one that really doesn't think much, it's more reactionary. That's the sense. Here's an individual, Satan, who has been banished from heaven. He has been defeated by Michael and his angels. He knows that his time is limited, and he is doing nothing except reacting in anger. Why is that? Because according to the text, he knows something. And what he knows is that he hath but a short time. He knows that his time left is limited. I know that we talk about Satan as a powerful being, and there is no doubt that he is. I don't want to undermine that, but we cannot exaggerate that. He is not the opposite of God. He does not have the same power level of God just for evil and God for good. These are not two opposing forces of same stature. There is God and there is Satan. Satan is a created being. He has fallen from heaven, and he has a limited time on this earth. And at this point in time, his time has even gotten more limited. He is as angry as can be, and his anger is nothing more than an outburst of emotional anger, and it is directed against those who are here on this earth. It is a time, no doubt, that is limited. Secondly, I'd like you to note that it is an oppressive time. Verse 13, when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man child. So knowing that his time was limited and that he was unable to destroy the Messiah, even though he tried, his focus is now going to be directed against the Jews. And as we saw earlier on, the woman that was described earlier on in Revelation 12 is not the church. It is instead representative of all Israel through whom the Messiah came. Now that he is unable to stop God, and now that he is unable to stop God's work, he's going to now unleash his efforts and all of his anger against God's chosen people. What is he doing? All that he's doing is everything he can to hinder God. You know, Satan's doing the same thing today. It's on a smaller scale than I believe is going to be taking place here, but the Bible tells us that he is as a roaring lion seeking about whom he may devour. He doesn't want you to be okay. He doesn't want your life to in any way be successful. Really, what he wants to do is destroy you. His entire agenda, even today, is to do everything he can to hinder God's work. Now, if you're not doing much for God, you play right into his hand. He can pretty much leave you alone and direct his efforts against someone else. What a shame that many Christians are content to live that kind of a lifestyle, but that is exactly what is going on. It is a limited time, and it is clearly going to be an oppressive time. All of his focus is directed now against this woman, representative of all Israel. Well, let's move on thirdly and note a protected time. We find in verse number 14 that she is given 2 wings of a great eagle that she'll be able to fly into the wilderness, into a particular place. What does all of this mean? Well, let's go back in our Bibles to Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24, we had begun studying this chapter a while back, and it is clearly emphasized here that what we're dealing with is not the church in the Olivet Discourse that is found in Matthew 24 and 25. Instead, what we're dealing with is this time that is known as the tribulation, and it is clearly affecting the Jews, not the church. And so all of the signs and so forth are there that are picturing the second coming, not the rapture. Do not get those two things confused. When you get those confused, you're going to start to run into a lot of problems, especially here in Matthew 24. Now, I want to just read some text, though, because this is going to be illustrated for us here in what it is that is going on in Revelation 12. Verse 15 of Matthew 24, and this is going to clearly mark the beginning of the second half of the tribulation. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, and this is going back into Daniel chapter number 8, where Antiochus Epiphanes is there, but yet he is a figure, a type of the Antichrist who is yet to come. We're not going to take the time to get into that, but that is referencing back to Daniel chapter 8. And what he did, and this would be at about the 160s range, he unleashed his fury against Jerusalem and against God's people and erected an altar to Zeus in the temple, desecrated the altar, and it was a time of great persecution for the Jews. He named himself Epiphanes, the glorious one, Antiochus, the glorious one, and he wasn't so glorious, and there were a lot of problems with that. There was a group of Jews that came and actually conquered him in what we would describe today as guerrilla-like warfare. They cleansed the temple and got everything going again. That's where Hanukkah comes along, the Festival of Lights, where they got everything going again in the temple. And so that's the time frame that is referenced. Now that man was just an absolute monster of an individual. He is a picture of the Antichrist that is yet to come. And this is the reference Jesus is talking about. So when you see this take place, and this will take place at the beginning point of the tribulation, the Antichrist has a covenant with God's people. Everything seems so peaceful. And then all of a sudden, he breaks that covenant at the midpoint. When that covenant is broken, the great tribulation, the latter half of the tribulation begins, and that is when the persecution becomes intense. This is the time that we're talking about in Revelation 12, and this is the focus in Matthew 24. So let's read what happens. Then let them which be in Judea, verse 16, flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. In other words, get out of there quickly. Don't delay. When you see this come, flee. Flee like you've never fled before. Amen. Woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days to the infants. Why? Because it's going to slow the travel down. Your chances of escape are greatly reduced. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. Now, we've seen throughout history some periods of great persecution. This is unprecedented. Continues in verse 22, except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh saved. But for the elect's sake, Jews, not believers in the church age, those days shall be shortened. If God did not intervene, and you can go back now to Revelation chapter 12, if God did not intervene, Satan's attack against the Jews in this time would completely eliminate them. But God intervenes. And because of that, you find that this is, in spite of all of the oppression and persecution, this is also a protected time. We find letter A that, first of all, there is a divine escape. The text describes her as being carried, given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place. Now, the imagery seems to suggest that there is a level of special care and protection that is going to be given to her. In fact, in the Old Testament, you find on a couple of occasions where God references this type of an analogy to illustrate his care for Israel. Exodus 19 and verse 4 tells us, ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now you're familiar with the Exodus, I think. When the children of Israel left Egypt, did they leave on literal wings of an eagle? No, they did not. I'm sure Moses would not have minded if he could have gotten that whole grumbling group of people off on an eagle's wing. Perhaps some of them he would have sent one direction and others on a different eagle. I don't know, but that's not what happened. So the imagery clearly is suggesting that of protection and that of special care. Deuteronomy 32 also illustrates this, verse 11, as an eagle stirreth up her nest, fluttereth over her young, spreadeth abroad her wings, taketh them, beareth them on her wings, so the Lord alone did lead him, and there was no strange God with him. I remember when my grandparents were still alive down in Florida, just outside of their retirement village, there was a massive eagle's nest. And that thing, I think they said, was about 8 feet in diameter up when you actually got up in this tree. And you could see this thing from a long ways away. And I remember multiple times going down there and being able to see that eagle, or at times 2 eagles, sitting in that nest. And then as the babies began to grow, you could look and you could see little heads out over top of this. People came from all over the region to just see this particular nest. It was probably less than a mile from my grandparents' house. And it was a fascinating thing to see. The imagery that is used here as God spreads over the wings. Why? Because he's protecting his chosen people. And this is what is going on, I think, now in Revelation chapter number 12. And so there is a divine escape that God orchestrates. Secondly, there is also a divine protection. They are taken away on these 2 wings of a great eagle, and she flies into the wilderness, into her place. Where is that place? We do not know. It's an undisclosed location. As you can imagine, any time that we don't know something, everyone speculates as to where it is. And there are plenty of speculations as to where it is. Well, part of the reason that it's safe is it is undisclosed. Okay? And so God is the one who is going to do this. Now, who has chosen this area? God himself has chosen this particular area. Now, it is an area that is, although they are safe, there is still a great degree of persecution that is still going to come. I meant to put this up on the slides. I do not believe that I did. No, I did not. Turn back to Zechariah 13 if you can find it. If you can't, that's okay. Just listen closely. I promise you I'll not judge. Zechariah chapter number 13. And there's a tremendous amount of prophecy that is found here in these latter chapters of Zechariah. Unfortunately, there are many who honestly just simply ignore them. Zechariah 13, right after the book of Haggai, right before Malachi. If you find Matthew, you just missed it. Zechariah 13, I want you to notice verse number 8. And it shall come to pass that in all the land, saith the Lord, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die. But the third part shall be left therein, and I will bring the third part through the fire, and will refine them as silver is refined, will try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, and I will hear them. I will say it is my people, and they shall say the Lord is my God. Now, verse 7 was the verse where smite the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. That clearly happened in part at the crucifixion. The sheep were scattered. You could look in history and see when Titus, the Roman general, invaded Jerusalem, destroyed the temple in AD 70. This also would have been a period of time when many would have fled. However, verses 8 and 9 would suggest that the ultimate fulfillment is probably where we're talking in Revelation 12. If that is the case, understand that 2/3 of the Jews are going to be killed during this time. That is a staggering number to consider. 1/3 is going to be kept alive. How are they going to continue to survive? That leads us to number 3, a divine provision. I don't have the answers for all of this. I wish that I did. But the Bible tells us in verse number 14, that she'll fly into her place where she is nourished. Who takes care of Israel? God does. Now, I don't know, is this miraculous as he has done in previous times? It seems to me that it is. Satan is not omnipotent. He's not all-powerful. He's not all-knowing, but he's not stupid. Okay? He would do all that he can to try to eliminate all of the resources, including food, to be able to defeat them. But somehow, God is going to protect them, and God is going to nourish them. Let's just hit the pause button for just a moment. Aren't you thankful? Even though we are not Jews, we are in God's hand today. Amen. Aren't you thankful for that kind of protection? I mean, the whole world can fall to pieces, but we're okay. We're in God's hands. And that is exactly what is found here in Revelation chapter number 12. Fourthly, I'd like you to note that there is also a divine limit. According to our text, verse number 14, she is nourished here for a time and times and half a time. Now, this is a phrase that is used, time meaning 1, times meaning 2. 1 plus 2 equals 3. And then half a time. So we're talking about a period of 3.5 years. This has been spoken of in Daniel chapter number 7. Again, I'm going to pull up some verses here, but we do not have time to go through this entire vision that Daniel had in Daniel 7. Verse 24, the 10 horns out of this kingdom, this is out of the revived Roman Empire, are 10 kings that shall arise. And another shall rise after them. This is the little horn that is mentioned earlier in Daniel 7. This little horn will rise after them, and he shall be diverse or different from the first. And he, the little horn, which is representative of the Antichrist, shall subdue 3 kings. So out of these 10 kings, 3 of them are going to have the bright idea that we are not going to follow his rule. They do. They are subdued. The other 7 say, wow, that looks like that hurt. I'll go ahead and listen and do what it is that he's saying. Who are these 10 nations? We don't know. It's a federation that is in existence at the same time. We know that they are occupying different territories. But this little horn comes up in Daniel's vision, and this is the Antichrist. He's the one that comes onto the scene. According to our text, verse 25, he, that little horn, or the Antichrist, shall speak great words against the Most High. In other words, he's going to speak blasphemously and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. The idea is that of wearing out as you would an old garment. He is going to do all that he can to try to hinder them and to kill them. He shall think to change times and laws. Not sure exactly what that means. Commentators say that in some cases it might be religious festivals and so forth that he's going to try to alter. Others say it doesn't have to be a religious festival, but it might be that he's going to suggest that he can change the times and the seasons that God has instituted. If you're familiar with history, you might recall when the French decided to do that. The French said, hey, you know what? We're tired of this 7-day work week. We're going to do a 10-day week. And it didn't work. You can read about it in history. And it may very well be that the Antichrist is going to have that kind of a mindset. We don't know. And it doesn't even say that he's going to be successful. But it does indicate that he is going to try to do this. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. The exact same or similar phrase that is found for us in Revelation 12. What did Matthew 24 tell us? Matthew 24 told us that if these days had not been shortened, there should no flesh be saved. When you read through Daniel 7, I actually just submitted a paper off of this text last night, not to push anything short, but when you read through Daniel, all of Daniel, but even Daniel 7, you discover, you know what? God's in control. Always. Always has been, and he always will be. And yes, there are some terrifying times that are yet to come. As believers living in this age, we're nowhere here. Okay? This is what is going on the earth. We've been raptured prior to all of this. And so God himself, however, is still in charge. And he is still advancing his kingdom in the way that is going to end in a manner that brings ultimate honor and glory to him. Let's move on, number 4, finally, and note an unprecedented time. We find this in verses 15 through 17. The serpent cast out of his mouth. Now the serpent, the dragon, Satan, all of these are the same. Okay? The serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. Is this a literal flood of water? Probably not. For a couple of reasons. One, the geography of Palestine is really not going to be conducive to this, and it would be very difficult. Secondly, the idea that people would all flee, remember the woman is representative of Israel, the idea that they would all flee in the same direction is probably not going to happen. Everyone would naturally go in opposite directions. So it would seem better understood as a symbolic expression of Satan releasing all of his efforts against the Jews. Every weapon, we might say, in his arsenal is thrown at them. However, the earth, verse 16, helped the woman. And the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. In spite of Satan's attempts, it didn't work. How does the earth help her out? Well, it may be that the earth provided protection. Various individuals might take refugees in. It might be that there is shelter that is provided. Regardless, there are ways that his plans were hindered. Look at even just in history. Go back to the time under Adolf Hitler and the persecution against the Jews. Look at the people who stood up, Corrie ten Boom, for example, and said, I'm going to hide these Jews. Okay? Tremendous courage. Okay? But he couldn't have his plan completely fulfilled. And it would seem as though that's exactly what's going to happen here on this. The dragon, verse 17, is not happy about this, however. The dragon was wroth with the woman, was angry with Israel, the Jews, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. Now it seems then as though there is a distinction that is being made between ethnic Israel, a Jew by descent, and godly Jews. There are some Jews who are going to be saved during the tribulation. We know 144,000 are going to have a special seal that is marked. So there are Jews that are going to be saved. So there's a distinction. So now the effort goes not just into the ethnic Jew, but to those who are genuinely saved, the godly Jews, the ones that are continually keeping the commandments of God, the ones who have the testimony of Jesus Christ. In other words, in doing so, these are saved Jews. What was the premise that we developed? Although Israel is faced with unprecedented persecution, God will not abandon his people. God will still remain true to his covenant. The details of Revelation 12 illustrate for us in language that admittedly is difficult for us to even comprehend the degree to which these individuals are going to face some severe persecution. But even in that time, God is still in charge. It would be easy for us to close our Bibles and say, wow, that's great. And it is. But let me ask you a question. Is God still in charge today? And he is. As believers, we ought to take comfort in that reality, because at times it seems as though the world is spinning wildly out of control. However, God is still in charge. Culture will do all that they can to oppose God and shake their fists in God, and oppose those who follow God. Let them shake their fists, because we know how the story is going to end. Is it going to be challenging? Absolutely, it's going to be challenging. And as we live in the last days, we know that these things are going to get increasingly more and more difficult. However, there has to be the reality that you and I decide you and I are going to be faithful, regardless of what everyone else may do, because God is going to remain true to his word. Let's have a word of prayer, and we will transition into the business meeting. Lord, I want to thank you for the day, and thank you so much for your many blessings to us. Thank you for this opportunity that we have to be able to study your word, and we truly rejoice in how the realities of how all of this is going to play out. Thank you so much that you are in charge. I pray that you would help us to trust you and be what it is that you would have us to be in these times. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, let me